Pastor Jummy Opedare, a devout woman of God, wife, mother, and entrepreneur. A God-fearing woman who has devoted her time to ensuring that God's message is used to empower everyone, but most especially women. With a strong belief in the importance of women empowering women and educating each other through our life experiences, she is the founder of Women's Forum, Let's Be Real, a forum for women to work through issues and set and accomplish goals together. Held every second Friday of every month at 6 Elton Road, Lee Green, London. Keep up with Let's Be Real here on PRZ FM every Tuesday, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Let's Be Real on PRZ Radio 109.2 FM. My name is Jummy Opedare. I want to say thank you for tuning in again today. I really appreciate you. Thank you for your support, your comments, and everything that you have been doing, that you have been sending us topics that you want us to discuss. I want to say a very massive thank you to all of you. Tonight I have in the studio with me my very own Mr. T. God bless you. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to be here again.
Okay. Before we continue, I want to remind you that you can send us your emails on letsbelly@przfm.com. letsbelly@przfm.com. If you have any suggestions, you have any comments, you have any contribution, or any topic that you really want us to bring on here, we try as much as possible to bring someone that can dissect it down for you. Please don't forget, email it to us and we'll be able to bring it up on this show. Let's Be, we talk about real life issues, things that people are facing that they don't know how to discuss it. It's just to create an awareness of what to do, where to go, and if such things happen. So many things we'll be discussing that are not usually the topic that will be preached on a Sunday morning or something like that. So today we have decided to talk about happier living. The keys to happier living. We've discussed about this before, but there's so many elements to living a happy life. And tonight we are going to focus our attention on one particular topic, which we know that is very common in this day and age. Even though people might not recognize it, they might not understand it, but we want to discuss it. And I know Mr. T is here. He works in the public sector, public health sector, and is also a mental health first aid ambassador. So we need to, he will be able to throw more light, and we will discuss it together tonight. And I believe that we gain one thing or the other. While we are discussing this topic, you will be able to see some things in it, and you'll be able to identify what you need to identify. And before we finish, you will be able to know what to do with those things that you are able to identify. And even if you have not seen such a thing before, if it happens, you will know how to handle them. Okay, and the topic is anxiety disorder. So we'll be talking about anxiety because woman is natural to be anxious. It's natural, but when it gets to another level, then it becomes anxiety disorder. Mr. T, let's kick off by you telling our listeners what anxiety is.
Well, firstly, just again, thank you very much for inviting me to this show. It's always a pleasure to be here. And the topic we're talking about, anxiety disorder, is one of several common mental health problems that are facing people in our day-to-day lives. And so it's important that we do bring it up on forums like this. So it's a pleasure to be here actually speaking on anxiety disorders. In terms of your question, what is anxiety? Firstly, as you've explained, it is natural for us to feel anxious from time to time, depending on certain situations that we may face. You know, there are everyday problems that we all have to deal with, And it's a natural response that is actually helpful. So it's good that we get anxious, for example, when we don't have any money, or when we need somewhere to live, or we need some food. It's good to be anxious, or because then it kind of makes us focus and makes us try and find money and find solutions to be able to deal with those problems. If we weren't anxious when certain problems were faced, that would be a problem in itself that we might have to discuss at a later date.
Yes.
So in terms of anxiety, as I say, it's natural, but it can vary in terms of severity, from mild uneasiness through to terrifying panic attack. But when we're talking about anxiety disorder, and when it becomes a mental health problem, we're talking about when it is more severe. So the symptoms are much more severe than normal, when it is long lasting. So it's not like today I was anxious, tomorrow I'm fine. We're talking about a long lasting situation.
Being anxious.
Exactly. So it's continuous, and it's happening for up to a period of about 6 months. And imagine feeling anxious continuously most days for a period of 6 months or more. That's there is a problem that needs to be dealt with. And very symbolic is when it interferes with your work or your relationships. That's when we are talking about anxiety disorders in itself.
Okay, so we are saying that anxiety in itself is a normal feeling.
Yeah.
But when it carries on for too long, is prolonged, then it becomes something else. It becomes disorder. Yeah. And you can imagine, as you said, somebody being anxious continuously for 6 months. I can imagine what the people around such person will be feeling.
Yeah.
They might label such a person. They might think the person is weird. They might think this person is crazy. They might not understand. Well, we will go deep and
well, I mean, as you say, it's why it's important to discuss this thing, because if it might not affect you, but it might affect someone that you're in relations with. So it's so how to deal with that. And just a general point that it's easy for us to look at physical health problems. We've discussed several in this show. And I think recently we discussed heart attack and heart problems. And it's normal. We look at it, something's affecting you physically, we can see it, and we say, that's a problem, we need to find a solution, and we don't label or stigmatize. But when it comes to common mental health problems, it's easy to say, what's wrong with you, fix up. We don't take it as serious.
Exactly.
And we don't realize that just in the same way as you can be physically ill, you can also be mentally ill. And there is also a connection between the mental and the physical anyway, because when we talk about health, it's complete states, mentally, physically, socially. But when you're ill physically, it can affect you mentally, and vice versa as well. When you're ill mentally, it can affect you physically, as we'll find out soon with regards to anxiety disorders.
Okay, so what are the symptoms that people should look out for?
Well, anxiety can manifest itself in various ways. So it can be physical, it can be psychological, and there are also behavioral aspects. So when we talk about physical, we look at when you're anxious, you can have palpitations, chest pain, your heart can be beating rapidly. It affects your breathing as well, so you can be hyperventilating and have shortness of breath. There are neurological factors where you can be dizzy, sweating, headaches as well, and also people that have anxiety disorders can also experience feelings of vomiting, nausea, and diarrhea. So there are physical effects. That's one thing that one set of symptoms. Another important one is the psychological effects that can occur. So, for example, your mind might be racing, or you might be going blank. You might have problems with memory, excessive fear and worry, as we can imagine, confusion. So there are psychological effects, and there are also behavioral effects, which is key, because someone who has an anxiety disorder tends to avoid certain situations. And they also, they also tend to repeat certain compulsive. They may tend to repeat certain compulsive behaviors. We've heard of OCD, which we'll go into later on, and they can experience distress in social situations. So, just to go back, there are physical symptoms, psychological, and also behavioral symptoms.
Thank you so much, Mr. Steve. So we have physical symptoms, psychological symptoms, and behavioral symptoms. So I don't know what you have witnessed before or what any member of your family is exhibiting. So please, this is Let's Believe on PRZ Radio 109.2 FM. Let's listen attentively so that we can pick one thing or the other and be able to identify these symptoms and be able to know what to do with these symptoms that we have identified. Because normally you might see somebody vomiting and say, oh, the person is has overeaten or he's got tummy ache. But there's some other things that goes around it. Some people might say, I have chest pain. They might say, did you bang did you carry something? Did you fall down? But there's some other things that surrounds it. So we should be able to identify this thing and the causes and where they came from. A chest pain without any lifting, you need to examine it further.
I mean, for one thing to point out, it's not necessarily our job to try and diagnose, but having an idea of some of these symptoms, and it's a combination. So chest pain on its own might not be that you're experiencing an anxiety disorder, but when you combine this with the feelings of intense worry, fear, persistent, long lasting, and when it leads to withdrawal and avoidance of certain situations, you can start to maybe think that there might be something more and it might be an anxiety disorder. But
Good. Thank you so much. Okay. Now we have talked about the symptoms that even anxiety disorder can bring, but there are different types of anxiety disorders. Can we explain to our listeners?
Yeah, well, there are various types of anxiety disorders, and I'll just speak about some of the common ones. One general one is called generalized anxiety disorder, and this is when there is an overwhelming anxiety and worry, and the worries are commonly about things that may go wrong. So when you're talking about even before they've happened, so when you're talking about inability to cope with money, health, family, and work, and you're so worried, and the perceived threat might not even be there, but you just have that worry, and it's, as I said, it's long lasting. So this is not just about days. This is happening for continuously for about 6 months, and that's when it's likely that they will diagnose you with having some generalized anxiety disorder. And it manifests themselves in physical symptoms, headaches, stomach pains. There are also the psychological symptoms that we spoke about before, in terms of restlessness, feeling on edge, difficulty concentrating as well. So generalized anxiety disorder is one thing to be aware of. There's also panic disorder. Now, a person that has panic disorder normally has panic attacks, and a lot of us might have heard of panic attack, but we might not know that it's linked to anxiety and anxiety disorder. So, what is a panic attack? It basically is a sudden onset of intense apprehension, fear, or terror. So they can actually happen suddenly and develop rapidly. So, my first experience of panic disorder was with a family member, where all of a sudden they were holding their hearts, they were really, really worried, their chest was hurting them, and they were so scared that they thought they were going to die. And they were having problems. Well, they thought they were having problems breathing, although they were talking, which means if they're able to talk, their breathing is fine in general. But it's something that can happen to people. I've experienced it with family members, and a person experienced panic attack can feel like they're going to die, and that's the scary thing, really, that they just have in their mind that they're going to die, or they're worried about that, and it happens suddenly, and it's just one other one that we have to be aware of. So that's panic attacks, from panic disorders. One that a lot of us will know, phobias. And, when we think about phobias, we think about fear, don't we, and being scared of something. And it's not just about, I'm scared of flying, but you fly. You go there and you're worried.
It's worse than that.
It's worse than that. It's when it's persistent and excessive and to some extent unreasonable. And what happens is that you tend to try and avoid certain situations. So, for example, you could be there are situations of people that are so scared of crossing a bridge that they decide that to go the long way around. So you can imagine if you've got to go to work the way to get to work, or the fastest way to get to work, is to cross a bridge that will take you 5 minutes, and you're having to go a long route round, which takes like an hour just to get to that place. You know that it's not normal. There is a problem that we're talking about. So it's not like you're scared of just a specific thing without the avoidance and in behavior that results afterwards. So we have phobias, and there's loads of different types of phobias. I was in a team meeting this week, and one of the activities that they asked us to do was just talk about some of our fears. And there was someone who was scared of the wood in eating food that has wood in it. So for example, like lollipops or ice cream that has got wood in it.
Really?
they just would not
wow.
eat it. So imagine kebabs on skewers. They just will stay away and avoid it. So you just look at the effect on your life where you're not able to maybe eat certain things just because. I know
someone that could not go on the train.
Yeah.
No matter how.
Yeah, and we get that a lot.
Someone that would not fly.
Yeah. So there's a colleague of mine who's claustrophobic, and because of that, she, imagine going to work and the rush hour that happens in the morning in British Underground, for example, they just can't do it. So because of that, they walk to work. That's the kind of change in behavior that they've had to undertake. There's examples of football players. There's a famous football player that could not fly, so he could not attend away matches or had to go the long way to get to away football matches. So that's just phobias, and just thinking about how that can just affect your day-to-day life. So that's another example, and there are two more that I just want to quickly point out. One is post-traumatic stress disorder.
Okay. Yeah.
So we hear of this, and as the name kind of seems to suggest, it happens after an actual or threatened, a serious event. So it can be something that happened, for example, with soldiers when they've gone to war and they've experienced so much death and injury. They come back, and a lot
damage, emotional.
And you can just imagine that when they come back, they're re-experiencing the trauma and of the events. There's flashbacks and those memories that is in their mind, and it could also happen to people who have experienced serious injury. So if you've had like a serious car accident, for example, or you've been abused physically, sexually, emotionally, it can lead to post-traumatic stress disorders. And the effect is, for example, if you've experienced like a serious car accident, it can lead to you not wanting to put yourself in that situation and never want
to drive again.
Yeah, exactly. So that is another example of an anxiety disorder. And last one, just to point out, obsessive compulsive disorders. Now we hear of this a lot. We hear people saying that you're OCD. Now just being neat and tidy and trying to keep your house in order, does not make you OCD. When we talk about obsessive compulsive disorders, we're talking about obsessional thoughts and compulsive behaviors that can lead to terrible consequences. So, for example, there are situations where some people, they have to wash their hands every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes. Now, that's not normal in the general sense. And imagine, and there are people that they have to keep on checking their cooker every so often to make sure that that it's not left on, or they have a fear that it's left on. And when you do that so many times, you're always rushing to the kitchen because you're scared in your mind that your house is going to go, you know, there will be a fire or so. You know that it is a problem. And you know that in that example of people washing their hands, they wash their hands so often that it can even lead to their hands bleeding. And it's just a real issue. So, you know, the fact that you're trying to be neat and tidy, you know, we use it a lot. You say you're OCD. It's worse than that. It's worse than that.
I watched a program on OCD, and someone would lay his bed as many times a day as possible and will not sleep on it so that it won't get roughened. We'll just be checking that it's neat, neat. I said, no, this is not normal. And the other person wash a toilet to the extent that she could drink water from the toilet. She wouldn't use it. She would just be cleaning and cleaning and cleaning. I just thought, this is not right.
And if you think about it, the amount of time and effort that they're using in washing the toilet and doing it over and over again, the impact on your day-to-day life, because you're expending a lot of time trying to, you know, acting on those behaviors, and that can lead to you not doing certain things that you should be doing, and that's when it becomes a problem. When it's interfering with your day-to-day life or work and family life.
So I think you are listening to us. There are so many types of anxiety disorder, generalized one, panic attack, phobia, post-traumatic stress, and OCD. I don't know, maybe you know someone that is exhibiting this. Just know that it is a problem, not their fault. Not that they want to behave that way, but they need help. There's something that needs to be done so that it won't go to that level, or maybe they've just started, or they're already doing it, they're exhibiting this on daily basis. You just have to come to their rescue, to come to their aid, and whatever you can do to support them. That is why we are discussing this particular topic. We are discussing anxiety disorder because we want us to live a happier life, not to waste time on unnecessary things, then to be able to recognize when people around us are facing difficulties so that we can bear it with them and not just give them labels. And I believe that after today's show, you'll be able to help someone. Okay, Mr. T, thank you so much for that. Now, what are the risk factors for anxiety disorder?
So, as we say, anxiety is mostly caused by perceived threats in the environment. Some people are more likely than others to react with anxiety when they are threatened. So there are people who, you know, have experienced extreme stress. So when you've experienced extreme stress, there is a higher chance that it might lead to anxiety disorder. So that's something to be wary about. You know, we talk about our relationship with our parents, and just in the same way as there are some physical health problems that are linked to parents, it's the same with anxiety. So if you have a very anxious parent, for example, there are instances with people with very anxious parents that have it's transferred to the children as well. Now, there are some people who are more sensitive to, you know, in their nature anyway, so they're more emotional and they see the world as threatening. So there are some people that just in their biological nature that they see the world as threatening. And then very important is also people who have had difficult childhood experiences. So people who have been physically abused. Sexually abused, neglected. And this is one area where, you know, women have a slightly higher risk than men. And you know, we tend to say that men bottle things down and women tend to feel more anxious than men. But there are some other things as well that can increase the chance of you having an anxiety disorder. So, for example, alcohol. Okay. So
back to it.
Yeah, we're back to alcohol. You know, it's strange how things that are not good for your physical health is also good for your mind. You know, the heart and mind are really closely linked. So you know, the funny thing as well is that people take alcohol to relieve feelings of anxiety. So when you're stressed or so you want to take alcohol, and in the short term,
drunk.
Yep.
By the time you wake up back to square one.
Exactly. So you take alcohol to try and relieve those feelings of anxiety, but long-term use can increase anxiety levels. So that's something to watch out your alcohol level. Another thing to be wary about is also caffeine intake.
Okay.
So, when we talk about caffeine, we're talking about caffeine in products such as coffee. People who take a lot of coffee, tea, even in some soft drinks like Coke, Pepsi, energy drinks like Red Bull. There is a lot of caffeine in there, and chocolate. There's caffeine in there, so we just need to be wary about our caffeine intake if we're someone who has an anxiety disorder or is prone to anxious situations.
I think when we did the Food for Purpose, you can go and listen to it, Food for Purpose, on SoundCloud, the one that we did last year. We talked about the level of caffeine that is necessary, every other thing. By the time you think it's just coffee that I'm taking caffeine from, and you had a bar of chocolate, a cup of tea, you had a can of Coke, caffeine in everything. Oh, I'm feeling sleepy, Red Bull. By the time you had them together, it's becoming something else in the body.
So it's the combination of all of it becomes huge. So it's not just, I don't drink coffee, I'm fine. You might be someone who drinks Coke, and that might, or if it's chocolate. So there is a chance that you're exposing yourself to these to caffeine, and we just need to cut down on caffeine if we're someone with an anxiety disorder. There are other things as well, such as like some illegal drugs, like cannabis, and other hallucinogens, some stimulants and opiates. So technically, when we say something is not good for you physically, there's a chance that it's not good for you mentally, and the consequences can be so severe. So we just need to listen. If we exhibit the healthy behaviors that we're trying to promote, not only the stuff for the heart, we're also helping our mind. So just let us listen to some of this advice.
Really, really important, because out of all these things that we have mentioned, I have not seen any that if you don't take them, you're gonna die, or your body will miss them. If you don't take caffeine and all the caffeine products, it doesn't. You are not missing anything. If you don't take stimulants, cannabis, you are not missing anything. They do more damage than good. And we need to rethink. We know people that are saying that, because I'm shy, that's why I'm taking this. By the time you finish that particular short-term need for it, it's going to have a long-term damage in the body. We need to start to think and face reality. Let's face it as it is, and not use an enhancer to help ourselves to destroy our own self.
Quick fix and short-term solutions, such as the alcohol and drugs, it's just not going to help you in the long term. So we just need to be mindful of that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mr. T. So now we've talked about the different types of anxiety disorder. We've talked about the risk factors, what can cause it. We talked about how to recognize the symptoms. Is there any treatment?
There are treatment, but before we get to treatment, there's certain things that we can do in terms of spotting people that have got problems with anxiety. The first thing that we should try and do when we think that someone might have an anxiety disorder is, and people get a bit worried when we say this, is to assess the risk of suicide or self-harm. Now, when we're talking about suicide or self-harm, it's a really serious issue, but the fact is that people with anxiety disorders are at an increased risk of attempting suicide, so particularly if there's also depression linked to it as well. So we need to be assessing whether it is so significant that it could lead to suicide or self-harm. So we need to be careful about that. So what we're saying is a person may have a strong but unrealistic fear that they will have a heart attack. This fear can spiral up into a panic attack as well. Now, in terms of panic attacks, one thing to try and do is to be careful as well, because the physical manifestations of panic attack might be very similar to someone having a heart attack. Okay. So it might be so similar, and don't just think that, oh, I'm a doctor, it's not a heart attack, it's a panic attack, so I'm going to treat it as a panic. Don't do that. Be careful. Unless it might be a family member or a friend that you know is prone to this and you've seen it before. Don't try and diagnose. If you think that, if you're unsure in any way at all, call emergency. So call, in England, 999, for example. Call for emergency support. But if you do think that it is a panic this attack, what you should try and do is to move them away from the situation. Try and find move them to like a quiet and safe place. Also try and keep them calm. You need to try and relax their breathing, reassure them. You need to listen without judging, because someone experiencing a panic attack, for example, they're thinking that they're going to die. Don't just say, stop being stupid, you're not going to die. That's not how we need to do. We need to listen without judging, and explain to them that, what they're experiencing is a panic attack, not like a life-threatening thing such as a heart attack. So we just need to keep on reassuring them and explain that it will soon stop if it's a panic attack, for example. I
can imagine like that your colleague that says he can't stand any wood in anything, and if such a person faces a panic attack and you say, don't be stupid, it's just wood. It's what it means to him is different to what it means to me. So we cannot underestimate the fear that he has about that particular thing, because we don't have that fear. We just have to roll on and reassure them that
there's something that we talk about, which is like your frame of reference, or the way you see the world. Your experiences, what you've been exposed to is much different to what another person has. So where you're from, your background, your education, your family, the people that you surround yourself with, your religion, the fact that you're a man or a woman, all those things affect the way you see the world and what you are. So when we're dealing with people, we need to do it from a non-judgmental point of view, where we just take ourselves out of it. Don't think that if it's me, this is how I'll deal with it. Be objective and be non-judgmental. It's something that we need to be aware about. So the first step really is to, if you're kind of looking at it from a quick first aid kind of point of view, and just as there is physical first aid, there is mental health first aid, which is what I'm actually talking about, is to listen non-judgmentally. So, and that it links to what you're just talking about, not using your own frame of reference or the way you see the world to judge others. So don't tell them that, oh, stop being weak, or you're lazy, or don't be critical of the person. And don't just tell them things like, pull yourself together. We just need to listen, first of all, non-judgmentally to the problems that they're experiencing and the anxiety that they're facing. The next thing really is to try and give some sort of reassurance and information. So help the person to realize that the anxiety is anxiety is a common illness. So you're not the only one that is experiencing this. There are other people that do have anxiety disorders, and it's not a weakness or a character defect. It's actually an illness. You tell them that there is help available, and there are things that you can do, there are skills that you can acquire to reduce the effect of anxiety. So as I say, the first step is from a first aid point of view, in terms of trying to help someone initially, is to assess the risk of suicide or self-harm. Then we try to listen non-judgmentally. We give reassurance information, but we also should try and encourage them to get appropriate professional help. And this might come in terms of a doctor, a GP, who will, do a full physical check, make sure that it's not just a physical health problem, that it's not that you have heart problems that could potentially lead to heart attack. It's that there is something happening psychologically that's manifesting in the physical symptoms. So encourage them to go and see a GP, and the GP can also advise them to get some counseling and support, and there are trained counselors out there that can help you. Or if necessary, they can refer you to specialized treatment. But there are also some things that we can do to help. There's some self-help strategies. One thing to note is that anxiety is best overcome by confronting the fear itself rather than avoiding the problem. The quicker you confront that fear, the sooner you'll get better. So that's one thing to be wary about. So if you're scared of heights, slowly, if you can't climb to the 7th floor, try climbing to the 2nd floor, and then slowly go to the 3rd, and slowly by slowly, try and confront it. And the fact is, because these are kind of irrational fear, the fact that you go up to a high building doesn't mean that you're going to fall down and die.
You know what? that particular say, I always have a question in my mind over it, because there are some things that I'm afraid of heights. And anytime we go to the park on roller coaster, I never find it funny. I never find it funny. And I heard about this lady that was scared of monkeys. And they said, face your fear. And went to face the monkeys. And the monkeys, the person that led her there, the monkeys did not do anything to her. But by the time she got in there, she was still panicking, and the monkey dealt badly with her. They tore her clothes, they fought her, and she ran out. Then I was asking myself, look at this thing. Is it true? Does this thing work?
The advice is
not in such.
Well, I
don't know.
The advice is to confront your fear. I mean, I'm thinking in an instance of the monkey, where the monkey, it looks like the monkey attacked the person. It would probably be better to have had probably a trained person there. I'm sure there was, but to expose in little bits where maybe they stand outside of the barrier where they can see monkeys. So for example, there are people who they're scared of certain animals that just even seeing it is a problem. So if you get through the point of seeing it to being within a certain proximity, but there are some fears that you can deal with life. So the monkey situation, for one, I can't think of a situation where it will affect.
Exactly, you don't have to see a monkey. So in such situations, you don't have to face it because it's not affecting your life. Monkeys are not on your way to work. They are not
exactly. When we're talking about anxiety disorders, the key thing is how it interferes with your daily living and ability to cope. But in instances where, for example, you're so scared of crossing a bridge or flying, it's important to slowly, try and confront and face those fears, because if the effect is that you're being stopped or from doing certain things that would benefit you and your life, then it needs to be dealt with and confronted.
That has crippled you.
So as we say, try and confront the fear, but don't just jump in the deep end, as we say. Try and do it slowly. We spoke about caffeine. Reduce your caffeine intake. Some of the advice is to reduce it to about 300 milligrams or less per day. Speak with professionals to understand how much that is really. As we say, what's good for the physical body is also good for the mind, and this always comes up. I listen to the show, and especially with the health sections, and we talk about physical activity. This is another thing all the time, and this is another instance where physical activity and the general advice is 30 minutes 5 times a week or so. That also helps with anxiety. We're talking about happier living. Engage in leisure time and pleasurable activities. It's just so important to surround yourself with positive things and positive activities. Engage in a hobby. Spend time with your friends and family. Don't stay isolated. And just engage in leisure time. One important thing is also sleep. It's so important to just get a sufficient amount of sleep, because I've had instances maybe when doing an all-nighter, revising for an exam or test, or even just trying to get through things, and you don't sleep. there is that huge headache that happens, and there's just huge effect. And if that continues, no doubt it will start affecting your mind and can lead to anxiety problems.
That's true.
There's certain things about, being aware that avoiding, the situation allows the anxiety or fear to grow even stronger. So try not to avoid those situations. And one thing that is important is to talk about your anxiety problems with other people. I always find that when you bottle things on your own, that the problem can escalate. And the problems can get deeper. I mean, I know of people who, because they're so anxious of what might happen in the outcome of opening a letter, that they don't open their letters.
Yes, but that
because especially in this country where 90% of the time it seems like it's a bill or bad news, that you just don't open letters, and what happens is that the problem escalates. So a bill that might be £30, and especially in this country, they know how to add when you miss certain deadlines. It can just grow and grow, and so we just need to be mindful about talking to people. Seek help. Don't be on your own, and there is also responsibility on others when people do approach you to exhibit the behaviors that I spoke about, where you listen non-judgmentally, give reassurance, and encourage them to get professional help if you think that's important.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So there are so many things that we can do that will help us to overcome this anxiety disorder before it becomes a disorder.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there is medication available as well, and psychological treatment. So just be mindful that there are also medication if it is very severe. Yeah.
Okay. So there's so many things we could do. This is Let's Believe on PRZ Radio 109.2 FM. We're talking about anxiety disorder. Before it becomes disorder, let's begin to deal with it, because it doesn't just become disorder overnight. It starts gradually. When you are anxious about something, now you cannot put an end to it. The first day, second day, third day, fourth day, you still have not gotten over it. It's becoming something else. So let's be watchful about this, or people around us that are going through this. Let's encourage them, let's cheer them up, let's make sure the environment is conducive for them. The relationship, don't let us make a toxic relationship for somebody that is anxious. It's gonna get worse, because you want to isolate your partner. You're not talking to each other, and she is anxious, he is anxious. You're gonna end up in big trouble. Both of you will be managing what you're not supposed to manage at the end of the day. So a good relationship, a good environment will help you to overcome this anxiety disorder and panic attack. Let's calm them down. Let's encourage them. Don't let us use our own word to judge another person's world, so that we will be able to help them. If not, they will not open up to us. So all these things help. And if it has come to the level, we need to consult our doctors, so that if it's medication that will work, please take your medication. If the medication will work, please take it. Don't say, I reject it in Jesus' name. If it has gotten to that level that you have to take your medication, please do take it. And God will make it to work for you. Because some people even take medication and it doesn't work. So take your medication, pray, and God will make it to work, to meet the purpose. So that's what we are talking about, anxiety disorder. Okay, Mr. T, there's one more thing I want you to tell our people tonight, that what are the different ways that people express their distress or despair when they are facing this particular condition?
Well, not necessarily this condition, but there are various ways that people express distress or despair. And one thing that I just wanted to point out is something called self-harm, because we're hearing about it a lot. And the way we look at self-harm is it's more of a behavior rather than an illness. But we're seeing it happen more commonly, especially among children and young people. where they exhibit certain behaviors such as cutting themselves, or burning themselves, or just harming. And to some extent, we all put ourselves through risk-taking behavior and harm ourselves. So when we talk about drinking excessively, eating what we're not supposed to do, we're harming ourselves. Taking what we're not supposed to do, drug abuse, exposing ourselves to certain unnecessary dangers. So we expose ourselves to certain risks, but we're talking about these behaviors. Certain behaviors such as cutting, burning yourself, and it's leading to a lot of people turning up in A&E and accident and emergency situations. And the thing is, why are people doing it? Self-harm is associated with low self-esteem, guilt, self-blame, and people that self-harm, they tend to do it because they need to feel in control.
Wow.
They need to find release from feelings of emotional distress. Some people have been exposed to terrible situations such as abusive abuse, and the way that they just feel that they need to deal with this is to self-harm. So we just need to be mindful of this, and help people and direct people to help if they are having these problems, because self-harm can lead to suicide. So we just need to be mindful of that.
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. T. That's what we are able to cover tonight. Thank you to all our listeners, and I pray that none of your families will suffer anxiety disorder. This is a mental health state, and if any is facing this particular situation, I pray that the Holy Spirit will walk through this person, and I declare healing even upon you wherever you are right now, in the mighty name of Jesus. Amen. I pray that the peace of God will be upon you in the mighty name of Jesus. Whatever is gone wrong in your life, Holy Spirit will readjust them in the mighty name of Jesus. Thank you for tuning in again today. God bless you, and stay safe.
Jummy, Opedare, a devout woman of God, wife, mother, and entrepreneur. A God-fearing woman who has devoted her time to ensuring that God's message is used to empower everyone, but most especially women. With a strong belief in the importance of women empowering women and educating each other through our life experiences, she is the founder of Women's Forum, Let's Be Real, a forum for women to work through issues and set and accomplish goals together. Held every second Friday of every month at 6 Elton Road, Lee Green, London. Keep up with Let's Be Real here on PRZ FM every Tuesday, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m.